Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar on the very important topic of trust. My name is Gloria, and I'm a consultant with Virtuositeam, and I'm very excited to be the host again for our webinar series and to have today's great discussion with our two old friends who are also the Virtuositeam's founders, Colin and Hanli. This is our fourth webinar in our exceptional webinar series. In the previous ones, we have talked about listening, collective alignment, and last time we talked about appreciation. You can find all of the recordings on our website and in our social media accounts like LinkedIn. So find us where you go on social media. And as I said, today we're going to cover the timeless topic of trust. It is such a fundamental aspect of all human relationships, whether personal or professional. However, it's a topic that I personally find can be a little bit hard to navigate. And Hanli and Colin, you can tell us about your experiences as well. But I often get a lot of questions about trust whenever I speak about management or covering other topics within the exceptional team's realm. No matter what the topic is, questions about trust always come up. And I think the reason might be because, like I said, it's such a foundation and precondition for many other great things in a team. But also I feel people put a lot of problems under the category of trust. They just think of a lot of things as trust. So before we get into the details and the how, I would like to ask you guys first to clarify what is trust actually? What does it mean? It's a term we hear a lot about, but what does it actually mean?
Yeah, so there are many definitions of it. I believe if you look in the dictionary, it'll tell you one thing. If you ask 10 different people, they might say 10 different things, just saying, right? Everyone has their own idea of it. The definition that I have found the most useful in the working space and specifically with teams is that trust is a combination of sincerity, reliability, and competence. So maybe I can illustrate with an analogy or an example. So I
understand the first two, but competence, how does that play a part?
So here's an example. I would trust Colin that he is, as an actuary, working on a project, very sincere as a human being. I can judge his reliability by how much he shows up when he says he's going to show up and deliver his work. And I trust that he's very competent at his job because he's had many years of training and experience. So as an actuary, my trust of him would be high. But if I needed my leg amputated, doesn't matter how sincere or reliable he is, right? He's not competent at doing that, and therefore I cannot trust him to do it.
Okay. Yeah, I think I need a few more beers before I'd consider getting engaged in that.
So it's the other person's competency in a way.
Right.
Okay.
And if you take away any of those three, so even if this is a fantastic surgeon that I trust in his competence, but he's unreliable, or she is unreliable, that will shake my trust. And of course, if they have reliability and competence, but they're not sincere, it would also undermine my trust. So you can see how they all work together and they can't be separated from each other. The main thing here to take away as well is that you can have it in one situation and not in another. So I can trust Colin in one situation, but I don't necessarily trust him in another. And that's what we have to keep on distinguishing. What situation are we in? Are these three things there and available to us? And how is that person showing up? And of course, when you break the trust, you have to restore it in some kind of way.
Okay.
So I mean, I'm thinking about it from a team perspective as well, rather than just, so you've described beautifully there the individual relationships and how we build trust between each other. But of course, we think a lot about the concept of team and when there's a team in a trust situation, what's going on there. And my experience of high trust teams is when we get in a situation where people are able to hand stuff off to each other with clear communication around what's required and so on, but know that when there's something given, a commitment is given that something will happen, that that's going to happen. That trust is there, and I guess that's going to fit somewhere in the three legs. That there's a level of individuals feeling comfortable with each other, able to share opinions and points of view, because you trust that what the people are saying is said with integrity. And so there's an openness and a willingness to interact. By the way, I don't know how the noise is here. Apologies again that I've had to come out because the internet's been disconnected at home, so I'm in a public place speaking. So I think there might be some noise coming from the background. Apologies about that, but hopefully I'm coming through clear enough. So
we can hear you clearly.
Okay, that's fantastic. So what happens? Deadlines are met. Things move between the team in a dynamic way, which is more than they would if that trust didn't exist.
So from what you said, I already hear two things. Like trust can be a feeling toward each other, toward the other person, and it also kind of feels like it can be a environment in a team.
I would say that the environment is something that's created in which trust can grow.
Okay.
So I think managers, leaders, it is important for them to show up in a way in which they can create a space where the sincerity is in place, that reliability is established as a value or a way of interacting, and constantly improving people's competence around certain things, and allowing when there is a breakdown for that to be a discussion without the kind of consequences that would alienate people or marginalize people or make them feel unnecessarily bad about something. So I think the environment that you create, and we might call that psychological safety, is important to support trusting relationships in team, and also restoring trust when things go a little bit bad, because sometimes that happens, right? We don't live in a perfect world.
So psychological safety is like the underlying foundation for trust to be built up?
It's interesting. I kind of see it more as something that is a container for it rather than a foundation.
Okay, yeah.
And in that, a whole bunch of interactions are happening, and there has to be high levels of skill of communication, making people understand what cannot be tolerated in a team. There's a variety of things that live in psychological safety, but trust is a core component of that.
I think that I liked what you were saying there about the distinction between actions and the context in which we live, and both of those have to be aligned and consistent, congruent for trust to develop and exist. So you've got to think about what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, and you have to think about the context in which you're doing it, and both of those support. The other thing, Hanli, that strikes me, and we've had this conversation before, and you keep making the point, it's very easy to destroy trust, much harder to build it up. It takes time. Trust isn't just, if people are coming to this webinar and hoping that they're going to hear the silver bullet, the quick magic solution for the creation of trust. It takes time, takes dedication, takes commitment, and focus on a vision of trust being the outcome that you're trying to generate, and then a persistent delivery of the behaviors and actions that deliver that trust for a period of time. But one slip, one fail, unless there's a very high level of trust, then that it's going to be quickly undermined, and any reinforcement of that, and you're gone for a long period of time. Your trust with customers can be undermined very quickly by one or two failures to deliver.
So this thing that is very precious and it takes a long time to build, it takes effort. of course, I think people would wonder, then why is it so important? Why do I have to have it in my team? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, and there are so many reasons, and we kind of hear us alluding to it because we're describing a situation where, if you're normal, you're probably thinking, I'd quite like to be part of that. That's an environment, a relationship that I want to be in. A trusting situation has to be a good one. So, I mean, there's lots of very good research on this, and perhaps we could actually share some of it with the attendees on the webinar afterwards. But one of the things that, or one or two of the things that stand out for me, I mean, one of them is we know at the moment stress burnout is a big problem for many organizations. We are putting people under more stress than we've ever done. If those people are sitting in low trust settings as well, the stress and burnout just grows so much faster. It's so much more difficult for us as human beings to cope with our day-to-day activities if you're sitting in an environment where you don't trust the people around you. And if you can't hand off to your colleagues to get work done, if you don't trust your boss to give you the information that you need to get the job done, it's going to be really, really difficult. And of course, that, I mean, this boss and colleague relationship, in terms of decision making, if you set up in the context in which a team runs a decision matrix, for instance, as a tool for deciding how decisions are made, and you use that rigorously, and people act in that, and that there is trust from those who are signing the checks to those who are delegated the responsibilities. That's powerful, and things get done quickly if the trust process works. If it's not there, it's not. Hanley, do you want to pick up on a couple of other pieces? I don't want to hog the whole show here.
No, and I think the other things could be, you would imagine that it builds a sense of belonging,
right,
and helps with feeling aligned with the team and the organization. And I think that also spills over into loyalty and retention. And that's one of the things that I think I'm noticing a lot of clients and customers at the moment are struggling with, not only getting talent, but keeping talent that they have invested in. So I think that retention piece, that have managed to build an environment in which trust is solidly one of the foundations. That's something that you can guarantee will happen as a result.
And I do happen to have some research in front of me, and from the research it says like companies with top quartile trust have 50% higher reported productivity, 50% higher retention rates, 88% more employees would recommend as opposed to work to family and friends. And I think, Colin, what you said was really, like, I find what's really interesting is that trust is not only from bottom to up, like from employees to employers, but also from employers to employees. And according to these researchers, it seems like employers typically overestimate the trust level in their teams. What do you guys think about that?
My experience is that, so sorry, Hanley, it's almost certainly the case. It's a case of wishful thinking, isn't it? There's the belief that if you trust others and you trust some people around you, perhaps that maybe that organizational trust is there, but you've got no sense of really what others are thinking about you and what you're doing unless you audit and ask the question. And I think that's where we're picking up that data from, is where the tests have been undertaken, where the research has been done to explore what's actually going on versus what perceive is going on. That wishful thinking of, I'm creating a trust environment here with my team from the leader who's perhaps not been trained to understand completely what all the elements of trust are and what everything needs to be in place, is thinking because they are in a certain mindset and belief, they're not getting the whole picture. Andy, you wanted to add as well?
No, exactly. And if you think about those three legs again, right, I think it's really important to look at whether you are recognizing excellence and giving public recognition for when things are going well, but also to support and facilitate the growth of people. So you're going to need that growth mindset, right? And focus on people management to ensure that piece is in place. But I think it's also, back to your point, it's about sharing some of that information quite broadly, sharing information in general broadly, so that everyone knows what is happening and what is going on, and they're not left with these gaps that people typically want to fill with their own stories. That's just how that is. If there's a missing piece of information, we'll put in information
right
going in our head.
Yeah.
Also to push people a little bit, like to give them challenges, to create challenges that releases a little bit of that oxytocin that moves people forward and gives them that sense of movement and achievement is one of the things that you could be doing to build more of that trust if you feel it's lacking, or just to build it anyway, because if as you said, if you know that it's underestimated, then you might as well be doubling down on these things.
I mean, can you have too much trust? I don't think you can. Sorry, Gloria, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, by giving employees some challenges, like if they conquered it well, it also create more trust for themselves. Like they can trust themselves more, more trust in their own abilities, build more confidence in a way. Yeah, and I also think like what's important is to distinguish the authentic trust versus what you think the trust level is, because I feel in organizations, procedures and processes are designed to make employees behave or look trustworthy. But the trust we're talking about is more of the authentic feelings that everyone feels around the team, right?
Right. And I think one more thing that I'll add is that at some point you have to also give people autonomy and just allow them to do the work so that they can demonstrate to you, right? And therefore borrow some of that trust. I think sometimes micromanaging is a message of not trusting.
Yeah, also like if you have a prejudgment of someone, that's not trusting that person. Right. Yeah. Great.
There are a couple of things I think we haven't picked up on. It's not important to every team, and there are some teams that want to crank the handle, but innovation, creativity also comes out of trust. So if you are, and I think this is going to become increasingly important as the world of work changes and AI perhaps take over some of the more mundane stuff, that the innovation and creativity, if you're not already in that industry, is going to be important. And therefore, again, the chances for people to speak up authentically, and thanks for drawing that out, Gloria, that's really important, about what they're thinking, about what they're feeling, about what's going on in the discussion, and to be able to drive, therefore, the conversation forward with their views, no matter whether people agree with them or not. And that's another part of trust, is being able to be knocked back by your team and to say, sorry, we disagree with what you're saying for these reasons, and then ultimately to walk out of the boardroom, the discussion room or whatever, having not got your way, but known that you've had your say and you've put the best possible view forward that you can.
Yes.
But as a team, you've come up with a different solution, and you trust in the team and your colleagues in order to get that. It's a really, for a human being, that's a very powerful place to be, because you can say what you need to say, and you don't get too attached to it because you trust in your colleagues. Powerful.
That's great. And you're already tapping into our third and final question, which is how do we get practical, right? How do you build trust when it's lacking in your team?
I would say the first piece that you can focus on, which is probably the easiest piece, is the competence piece, right? Allow people to be good at their jobs, give them the resources they need to be competent at what they do. People like to do well and to be better at what they do. I think the reliability piece perhaps comes in with that permission, autonomy piece, where you are allowing team members to do something so that they can show you, demonstrate their. And of course, I mean, sincerity is something that is you would hope that people that are in your team are sincere. I don't know if you can build sincerity, but to keep things real and to make sure that there is a sense of purpose and belonging in which people can sincerely connect with as a team or as an organization, that I think will bring that out a little bit more.
Yeah, I think there's an element there of leadership, which an unnatural part of leadership is vulnerability, and there are a lot of practitioners who are putting that as a key item of the leadership skills going forward. And I agree, if you can be open and vulnerable as a leader and a manager, that authenticity will come through and be reinforced. So learning how to build that in yourself and being able to deliver that, I think, will help the team move into a higher trust situation. I think we've talked about it on another webinar, which is recognition. That done well, that done openly in the right way, in the right manner, not overt to ridiculous levels of recognition for everything, but when people do things well and they do it beyond or at the level that is required, constant reinforcement of the recognition of appreciation for what they're doing is a great way to start on the journey to build trust. It's an easy thing to do, and it gets you moving on that journey. I think we mentioned that in that particular webinar. There's another skill, and then I'm going to pass over on, which is job crafting, and it's something that's started again to pick up a bit of momentum. I've heard quite a few practitioners talking about this as a concept, and it's the idea that individuals are able to shape their working environment. So as a team, you set a vision and goal for the future. You know what you need to achieve, and you start breaking that down into goals. But then the how-to, the bit that is, what do I actually do? What does Colin, what does Hanley, what does Gloria actually do personally to achieve that? That's then decided by the team individually. You work amongst yourself. Look, I'd like to do this. This is where my strengths lie. And you package it all up to the point at which, okay, if we got everything covered, and this gives people the opportunity to shape their working day, to some extent their working environment, so that they just get more out of being part of the team and achieving what the team can achieve.
Yeah, and while preparing for this webinar, we found a great quote. I think that kind of summarizes what you guys said earlier. It says, ultimately, you cultivate trust by setting a clear direction, giving people what they need to see it through, and getting out of their way. So there's autonomy, there's sincerity, there's believing in their competency, there's all of that, right? So, well, we're already about time. And as you can see, trust is such a deep topic. And that's why we're planning to have another webinar on this topic next quarter. And in the meantime, of course, if you want to learn more about this topic, you can go to our courses. We have a lot of more practical methods, theories, tips that you can practice with your team in our course. So feel free to go to our website at learn.virtuositeam.com. We'll also put it in the text. And don't forget to use your discount code, which we have already included in the description of this video. And thank you again for joining today's webinar on trust. I hope you found this session to be insightful and that it provided you with some practical strategies to build and maintain trust in your personal, professional, and especially in your teams, right? If you have any further questions or would like to continue the discussion with us, feel free to leave a comment or send us an email. Don't ever hesitate to reach out. Otherwise, have a great day and we will see you next time.
Thanks for hosting, Gloria. Cheers, partner.
Bye.